Да, зараз не перевірю.
Доброго дня.
Доброго дня. Чути?
Все чути чудово.
Зараз хвилинку ще приєднуються.
Так.
Шановні студенти, не будемо затягувати час. Розпочинаємо вже з такою кількістю, хто приєднався. Будемо намагатися ще долучити інших. У нас година часу. І сьогодні ми продовжимо дуже важливий напрямок, який ми розпочали. Це практичне спілкування із людьми, які безпосередньо займаються питаннями венчурного фінансування, оцінки венчурного бізнесу. На минулому занятті ми спілкувалися з колишнім директором фондової біржі в Франкфурті на Майні, а сьогодні я з великим задоволенням хочу представити людину, яка займається цими питаннями на іншому континенті. Це в США. І це колишній наш випускник Роман Озимко. Він зараз про себе більш детальніше розповість. Я сподіваюся, що ця зустріч буде для нас дуже цікавою і надзвичайно корисною. І раді вітати, Роман, вас в онлайні в стінах нашого університету.
Дякую. Всім доброго дня. Як Лариса Леонтіївна вже сказала, мене звати Роман Озимко. Я випускник КНЕУ 2012 року. І, в принципі, щоб описати мій кар'єрний шлях, то я почав роботу спочатку в ProCapital Investment в Києві. Це український інвестиційний банк. І потім згодом через там приблизно 2 роки я переїхав в Штати, в Нью-Йорк, де я спочатку працював трошки на JP Morgan Chase, великий міжнародний американський банк. Після чого я перейшов в менеджмент консалтинг, в управлінський консалтинг. В управлінському консалтингу ми працювали як традиційна консалтингова компанія, і згодом у відповідності до трендів, які відбувалися на ринку, наша компанія запустила свій власний венчурний фонд. Наша компанія має штаб-квартиру в Парижі, але якраз щоб займатися в Нью-Йорку венчурними інвестиціями, я тоді на той час побудував бізнес-кейс для партнерів нашої консалтингової компанії, що в принципі є доволі багато контактів в венчурній екосистемі і стартап-екосистемі в Нью-Йорку. І є потенційна, як ніби, користь для консалтингової компанії працювати з цією екосистемою. Зокрема, це для нас це було цікаво тим, що ми мали можливість знайти інноваційні технології, інноваційні стартапи, які в подальшому могли нам забезпечити ріст і інноваційність як консалтингової компанії. Ось почав я працювати як консультант. Зараз моя позиція називається Supervisory Senior Consultant. І наша ця лекція буде повністю англійською мовою. Правильно, Лариса Леонтівна, так? І то я переключусь на англійську, але також мені ще цікаво дізнатися трохи більше про аудиторію. Зокрема, якщо люди, які присутні, можуть написати, чому саме їх цікавить венчурні інвестиції, будь-то ви хочете бути кофаундером своєї компанії в стартапі, чи ви хочете працювати в венчурних інвестиціях, чи просто вам ця тема цікава і ви хочете дізнатись побільше. То я прошу, якщо можете в чаті написати, що кого більше цікавить, бо тоді, відповідно, я трошки, можливо, по ходу справ модифікую свою розповідь, щоб трохи більше відповісти на питання, які вас можуть цікавити.
Дякую, Роман. Ми з цього починали цей курс, але я думаю, що дійсно зараз цікаво ще раз подивитися ці результати. І хотіла сказати, що якраз ваш перший роботодавець ProCapital зараз допомагає нам створити бізнес-клініку в КНЕУ, де Антоніна Котова консультує всі наші проекти, які необхідні для такої оцінки, сторонньої оцінки нашими партнерами, випускниками, відомими особистостями в бізнесі. От Стефанія Парубець і Нактус, вони якраз і консультувалися вже в бізнес-клініці. Тому ще ми хочемо запровадити вашу ідею щодо акселератора. І зараз ведемо перемовини, як об'єднати акселератор і бізнес-клініку, щоб студенти могли і консультуватися, і отримувати допомогу від акселерації цих проєктів. Тому коротко ось для вас новини, що відбувається.
Чудово. Знову ж таки, так як ви, можливо, вже на курсі пройшли багато питань, то, можливо, я із матеріалу, який я буду розповідати, в деяких випадках буду повторюватись. Але, зокрема, моя розповідь сьогодні буде більше про оцінку венчурних проєктів і, зокрема, те, що ми приймаємо більше на практиці, як наша компанія.
Саме це для нас сьогодні найважливіше. І звести всіх інвесторів венчурних в одну тему це неможливо, тому що коли ми дивимося, як оцінюють, скажімо, в Штатах, це буде все рівно не так, як оцінюють німецькі партнери. А деякі, наприклад, там наші партнери з Європи кажуть, що взагалі бізнес-планування не потрібно нічого давати. Венчурний інвестор за 1 хвилину оцінить важливість вашого проєкту і так, бо має величезний досвід. Тому в цій сфері досвід кожного практика є безцінний, і тому ми намагаємося зараз, я навчаюся разом із вами, із відомими особистостями, які працюють в цій такій ризиковій сфері, які мають практичний досвід для цього. Тому слухаємо вас уважно.
Дякую. Я бачу, що дехто зацікавився цією темою після книжки про Ілона Маска. Насправді це чудовий приклад людини, яка побудувала величезну, як ніби, бізнес-імперію. І після лекції я ще пораджу деякі книжки, які, пораджу одну книжку, яка розповідає, з чого починав Ілон Маск, і особливо в компанії PayPal, коли він тільки започаткував її. Дуже цікаво. Але менше з тим я перейду до самої лекції і переключусь на англійську мову.
Прошу.
Так. Секундочку, я зараз поділюся своїм екраном. Секундочку, мені треба дати дозвіл Zoom записувати свій екран. Всі бачать мій екран?
Так.
Гаразд. Так, ми це сховаємо. Так, so let me start off. As I mentioned, my name is Roman Ozimko, and I will cover a topic of how Sia Partners, the management consultancy where I work at, how it engages into venture capital investments and just cooperating with the startup ecosystem, as well as some of the valuation methodologies that we use for the companies that we invest into. If anybody has questions, we are going to have a Q&A session at the end where I'll try to answer as many questions as possible. They could be around the topic of what my company is doing. They could be around the topic of valuation, or in general about topic how I got into venture capital. So feel free to ask them in the end, or you could also type them up in the chat so that, and I'll just read through it. So some of the things that we will discuss is Sia Partners open innovation ecosystem, how we work with innovation. In particular, Studio. We'll zoom in on Studio. Studio is our venture capital fund. That's how we named it. And then we will also go a bit into detail on a program that we run called Appificator. Appificator is an international challenge for startups that we run in Sia Partners. After that, we'll go through some key things that I think anybody in venture capital should know. You possibly already covered this in your course. And then through some common valuation methodologies, including some of the ones that we use at Sia Partners. I'll try to make this interesting, so I'll try to provide examples. So Sia Partners open innovation ecosystem. In general, management consultancies have various approaches to the startup ecosystem and working with VCs. Like for example, Bain has a classical venture capital fund called Bain Capital, which is active in growing its asset value. Then there's companies like BCG who have BCG Digital Ventures. It's basically a platform where you have specialists from consulting and from the tech world trying to build kind of startup solutions for clients, for like large corporate clients. And then there's like, for example, Sia Partners, which we have a bit of a hybrid of two worlds. Our Studio fund is a small fund. We launched it just around 3 years ago. It was initially a test to see how it will work out. Our fund is only 5 million euros, and our ticket price is up to 500,000 euros. We normally try to invest into 10 to 40% of equity value of the startup. And the goal is to target startups that are in the pre-seed, seed, and incubation phase. And what we try to aim for is when we invest into the startup, we try to use our management consultants in order to accelerate that startup. So we provide support, whether it's for like within digital innovation, whether it's in data science, whether it's actual in marketing strategy, or any operational strategies. That's something that we also advise them and help them out with. And the goal is when we invest into a startup is not specifically to grow our asset value in the consultancy, because as you might know, consulting business is all about growing revenue. So when you hear companies like the Big Four, KPMG, like Deloitte, PwC, or even the top 3 management consulting firms, Bain, McKinsey, BCG, they always concentrate on revenue flow. So the amount of deals that they have is basically the amount of clients that they have and the amount of work, billable hours that their consultants have. This is one of the kind of targets for Studio. We invest into startups that potentially could provide us additional revenue flow, where we could pitch that startup to a client that we already have. So as you can see, like the objectives are financial return on investment. Of course, when we invest, we do hope that there will be an exit in 5 to 8 years. But it also is to strengthen our credentials and capabilities within a sector where we think that we have room for growth. So for example, one of our first, like Sia Partners is very strong in the banking and in the energy industry. One of our first startups was actually in retail. And that's because like, I think retail made only 10% of the revenue at Sia Partners globally. So we invested into a startup called Big Moustache. It's a French startup, which is kind of like a copycat startup of the Dollar Shave Club. It's basically like a monthly subscription for shaving products. And the goal was basically to get more exposure with the retail sector. And we were actually successful in that. We grew that company to have many distribution channels, to have many retail spots. We used our connections and network with infrastructural clients such as railway stations, airports, to actually have pop-up stores for that. And we were able to grow it pretty significantly. Our next vertical is Appificator. It's an international open innovation challenge for B2B startups. The goal for that is to identify good technology partnerships that we could find. We started it off in Hong Kong, then we had it in Paris, Brussels, New York, Montreal, and we're currently in the process. I think we actually finalized our London challenge and also our Dubai challenge. What we do is the winning startup actually gets free services from Sia Partners that are valued at around 25 to 30,000 euros. And those services it could include anything. It's whether it's providing assistance with digital advertising or strategic solutions or helping with the operating model of the startup. But also it provides us like a good partnership with something very innovative that we could further broaden our exposure to existing clients or new clients. And the third vertical is just alliances and partnerships with just big technology vendors, such as Pega, Automation Anywhere. Automation Anywhere is like similar to UiPath or Blue Prism, which is robotic process automation. And Pega is also a technology company that concentrates on workflow management and digitizing workflows. So here are some of the startups that we actually invested into. We have a few more. So, I mean, Letria is a company that does language processing of the French language. It's basically a competitor to Google Translate, but the way that it was developed, it used machine learning and AI to build the phonetics of the French language from scratch, as if you would learn in school, instead of just doing a translation like Google Translate does. Happydemics is a market research platform. Livesty is a real estate investment platform for senior citizens. And Sparted is a micro training platform for the retail sector. Okay, so I kind of mentioned some of the main aspects here. Studio was launched in 2017. The total investment fund is for 5 million euros. We expect to expand it to 10 million in the next year. We were actually expecting that to expand it to 10 million this year, but because of the pandemic, our investment activity kind of dwindled down because we wanted to play it safe since it's not our main focus for business. And then also one of the main goals of Studio is to improve the entrepreneurial spirit within our consultants. So by having our consultants work hand in hand with these startups, they become more innovative. They start thinking more out of the box, and it's better in general for the consultancy to thrive in an innovative manner. Okay, and as I mentioned, we target companies that are in their incubation and acceleration phases. That's pre-seed, seed, and occasionally in early rounds, such as A and B, but it really depends on the company. And I would say it depends on the company mainly because companies in, for example, in the US who are raising Series A and B, they would be raising around from 3 to 15 million US dollars, while I've known that companies in Ukraine who raise like even 1 million or 3 million, that's often also can be considered as like Series A or post seed, as they call them, in order, I mean, that's a way that they call them just so that it's not really considered Series A because they actually want to raise more money, but they're not able to. So I've seen cases like that. Okay, so what is Studio? Some of these things are repetitive of the fund. We launched Studio in 2017, and we were looking into several different startups, as I mentioned, in order to improve our strengths in some sectors where we were maybe not as strong. So like Big Mustache, grooming and skincare. It was back in 2016, it only had 3 to 18 people, 4 barbershop and 2 major retail locations. After we invested into it and after like around 2 years, I think their team is close to 100 people. They have locations around all of France, and they were recently working on expanding to the UK and to London. Studio is also like, it's an experimental lab for Sia Partners. It's a way that, as I mentioned, our consultants could see what's out there in the market, could become more innovative. We understand that investing into a startup does not give you guaranteed returns. As a matter of fact, we have a case where we invested into a startup, which was like a fashion retail startup, which was unsuccessful. And there are many reasons why a company may be unsuccessful. But when you invest into startups, let's say out of 10 companies, maybe 1 or maximum 2 would be successful. The others tend to most likely will fail. And when you consider successful, you don't really consider that it will become a unicorn. A successful company is a company that has an exit, meaning it was acquired later on, or it went through an IPO, or it's just became like a profitable company. And often case, like investors, when they also consider a successful company, is just a company that provided return on investments. As long as it provides return on investments, fine, it's successful. Because as soon as something is negative, then, well, obviously it's a failure. So when we launched Studio, we leveraged some of the network that we had. We leveraged connections that we had with incubators and accelerators. In particular, we concentrated on building out our connections with Techstars in the US, with other accelerators like Y Combinator, Startup 500, with companies like Empire FinTech, which in New York, it specializes on FinTech. There's also other accelerators which are more local to different cities, like there's the Boston Mass Challenge, there's the Queen City Tech Challenge in Charlotte, North Carolina. So we work with individual ones like that. But also a big focus for us was to build out our connections with university incubators and university VC funds. In the US, it's pretty developed. And I think, well, actually, let's be frank. In the US, the venture capital sector is like the most advanced in the world so far. So like you have university venture capital funds, such as in Columbia University, like it would be called Columbia Venture Capital, which is like a multi-million-dollar venture capital fund. And we try to work with these universities because they provide a good output of early stage companies, whether it's seed, pre-seed. For the startups, the benefits that we provide is obviously the exposure to our experts. We have subject matter experts in finance, marketing, sales, revenue modeling, HR processes, data science. We have in Sia Partners, we have data science labs that are established in Paris, Amsterdam, and Montreal, which have just dedicated data scientists who build solutions and develop different software that could help either startups or even our clients. And we provide coaching to startups and training. And we help the startups by leveraging our network of corporate clients. And we connect those startups with these potential customers. Let's say, for example, Letria, which is a French NLP, natural language processing AI tool, and it needs to expand its client base by contacting major French businesses. Well, we would connect Letria with BNP Paribas, with Société Générale. We would connect Letria with Auchan and other big major corporations, and they would provide solutions to them. So it's just general, we develop the synergies between the startup and the existing corporate clients that we have. Appificator has a bit of a different model. So as I mentioned, we already had the challenge in Hong Kong, Paris, Brussels, Lyon, Montreal, and New York. Each challenge or each location concentrated on a specific field. So for example, Hong Kong was concentrated on technology for customer experience, while New York was concentrating on technology for banking and finance, mainly fintechs. And Montreal was more concentrated on technology for the manufacturing industry. And so like, and within these 4 challenges that we already had in before, because like London and Middle East are challenges that are taking place or already took place in 2020. In 2019, the winners of the challenges were actually startups that were, I would say, early rounds. So they were about ready to raise their Series A rounds. Due to that, we were not ready to invest into them because that means we would have to invest a larger ticket, which is not something that we were really planning. So we partnered with these innovative companies. For example, SetSail is also a natural language processing solution for contact centers. What they do is they improve and optimize just customer support through chatbots and just contact centers, and like whether it's automated voice bots. They already had clients such as IKEA and others, and like major banks like HSBC in Hong Kong. And we thought this could be something that we could definitely use even in the European market or in the US market. Intelligence Industrielle was machine monitoring platform. What they did is they already had partnerships with major corporations like Bombardier in Canada, and they were basically, they allowed greater efficiency in monitoring how machines at the factory were working, basically like for quality assurance. Hydrogen is the fintech company that won the challenge in New York. Hydrogen is an API platform where they help outdated banks, such as banks that maybe don't have a mobile banking platform, or maybe their online banking platform is a bit outdated. They help such banks catch up with the market by providing out-of-the-box API solutions so that the bank could immediately, in a short term, within a month or 2, roll out a mobile banking, online banking platform, which is sophisticated and pleasant to use for customers. And it also includes like robo-advisory platforms for asset managers that have not developed their own robo-advisors yet. So going further, I'm not going to go into detail on who won in London, who won in Middle East. London is basically also a fintech startup, while in the Middle East, it's more of a customer experience solution. So what's in it for the startups to participate in this Appificator challenge? Well, the main goal here is for Sia Partners is to find new innovation, new products and solutions that could bring results to our clients. Again, we want to foster a collaborative culture within our company. We want to have our consultants be updated with the new industry trends and technology. And it's also definitely a marketing PR moment for Sia Partners. So the entrepreneurs that are targeted are early round or seed companies that need momentum for further growth, and that they could use the network of connections that Sia Partners has. They could also, the startups could also benefit from our data science labs. So for example, we have resources that we could deploy to the startup to enhance their solution and make it more sophisticated. The benefits are also that we provide 6 months of coaching by a dedicated mentor to the startups. We support the startup in building a commercial service offering for for an outreach to clients and marketing material. If the company is really early on, we help them actually finalize their proof of concept with potentially some of our clients actually. And in general, the startup benefits with free services from Sia Partners worth from 20 to 30,000 euros. So going back into venture capital and the venture capital industry, there are key things that you definitely should know, key concepts that you should definitely know. In particular, you might have heard about some of these. So, but I also wanted to concentrate more to give you a rundown of the general VC landscape for third quarter of 2020. Going into this year with the pandemic, there was a lot of concern that the amount of funding that will be given to startups this year will be drastically low. However, we have seen that even though there was some drop, there were also some good progress in other aspects, such as late stage rounds and late stage funding. So in 2019, there was a total of $294 billion that were invested by venture capitalists across 32,800 deals. As of third quarter in 2020, the total global funding is right now approximately 205 billion US dollars. And the trends that we've seen is seed stage funding definitely went down by 32%. Seed stage funding, as I mentioned, is funding that's under $3 million. Early stage funding is down by 18%. Early stage funding is funding from $3 million to $15 million. That's Series A and B. Late stage funding is Series C and later on, and D and etc. And late stage funding actually increased by 24% compared to 2019. If you do want to work in venture capital, you definitely need to know the key players. You want to know the key players, whether you want to work in early stage VC firm, a seed stage VC firm, or a late stage VC firm. And here's the rundown of the top VC companies by activity, by the amount of deals. What I do want to also highlight for the first 3 quarters of 2020 is, as I've noted that there was an increase in late stage funding, there was also an increase in exits within startups. And that means there were more acquisitions actually in 2020, and there were more IPOs. And among some of the notable ones that you might have heard is Snowflake, which is a cloud-based service. There's Palantir, which is a data mining and machine learning service. There's Asana, which is a project management platform. And there was an IPO of Lemonade, which is an insurance platform that completely digitizes the insurance process. So some of the key concepts is, I'll mention here, it's a term sheet. Term sheet is very important for a startup. It starts off with a letter of intent, and it notes the material terms of a deal, whether it's seed stage or an early round. You definitely need to get lawyers involved into it. And the more details that are mentioned in the term sheet, the better it is for the startup. And the reason why is, if the startup notes most nuances in the term sheet, that means a potential investor has less reason to discount the valuation of the startup. Due diligence includes everything from pitch deck, financials, business model, patent filing, legal issues, insurance, loans, etc. Due diligence is where you actually do the valuation process, which we will get to further on. And financing stages, as I mentioned in the previous slide, seed, which includes pre-seed and angel rounds under $3 million. Series A and B, that's early rounds from 3 million to 15 million. Series C is later rounds over 15 million. And you have a few characteristics on the right of what they are. So normally in seed rounds, you're raising money based on a proof of concept. You maybe have a few clients, but not that many. And when you raise Series A, B, you basically are giving preferred stock to investors, and you concentrate on using that money to build on key metrics and improve the financially improve the company with revenues, sales, and etc. Series C and later rounds is all about growth. So the company is working. The company has enough labor force, and it has significant funding, but it needs to drastically expand to increase their sales departments and maybe potential development. But this company already has a working solution, a platform, a technology that's prepared for the market. So you've most likely heard about Series C rounds in the maybe recent rounds of like N26 banks, Revolut banks, things like that. Those are challenger banks that have been raising around $300 million in Series F, E, and etc. rounds. And mainly they were targeted for expansion from European markets to the US markets. And there are other examples like that. Some of the terms that you should also know: convertible note, that's debt that is converted into equity in the company. This is funding provided by the investor, and it's triggered by a future financing round. Then there's convertible preferred stock. It has preference over common stock. It's normally raised in Series A and later and can be converted into common stock. And you should know terms like pre-money and post-money. Pre-money is the value of a company before any money is invested, and post-money is pre-money valuation plus the actual investment. I have a small problem over here that we could kind of run down. I'm sure you might have done problems like this before, where, for example, a company raised its seed round by issuing a convertible note with $4 million in valuation cap. Valuation cap is the maximum price at which the investment will convert into equity, and at no discount. The company then does a Series A financing round at a $12 million pre-money valuation and a $10 price per share. What is the valuation cap adjusted price per share for convertible note holders? So to dumb it down, basically what it's asking is, what will be the share price after the money has been raised? So the pre-money valuation is $10 price per share, and that was at $4 million valuation cap. And once the financing round has been closed for $12 million, what will be the share price? This is a simple, basically, problem where you kind of, you divide 12 by 4. That will be your rate that you would multiply the price per share. So the price per share would be $30 per share after the Series A financing. A concept that has been super popular in the US, but is not very popular in Europe, is a safe note, simple agreement for future equity. This concept, this type of financing, this type of note has been developed by Y Combinator, and it has been developed in order to provide more freedom for startup founders in the US. It's a convertible security which allows an investor to buy shares in a future priced round. No interest rates or maturity dates. The only negotiable part is the valuation cap. So what this means is, also in very simple terms, is if, for example, a startup in its seed round raised $3 million, and it's via safe note, the investor normally would evaluate how much what would be the cost per share during that investment. Say, for example, the investment was $3 million, and the investor bought maybe, let's say, 30% of that company. So and the share price totaled to let's say $10 per share. So when the next round is raised, like in our previous example, like 12, let's say we raised a Series A of 12 million, the share price would actually be the multiple of what was raised. So for example, if we raised 12 million, that's 12 million divided by 3 million, that's 4, and your share price would cost $40. You would not get that money, but for example, your share price will further on multiply after every subsequent round. So for example, if Series B funding comes next, and instead of 12 million, you raise, for example, you raise an additional, let's say 24 million, that means your share price would, well, it would actually like increase by 100%, because, well, let's say no, by 3 times. So for example, in total, you had 12 million valuation plus 24 million, that's 36 million in total. After an additional investment, and that means like your share price was $40 per share, and then it increased by 3 times, so $120 per share. That's how the safe note works. So there is no interest rates and maturity dates for that, and it continues until you have an IPO or the company is completely bought out. So common valuation methods. I'm just checking my time. One thing that I would definitely say is that Brett Feld, who's a managing director of Foundry Group, said that the only thing that we know about financial prediction of startups is that 100% of them are wrong. And you have to take that, you basically have to take valuation with a grain of salt, because the thing is, like, you're trying to predict the future. You're trying to predict how the future company will develop and how much money it will be making and how much it will be costing. And nobody knows the future. So each valuation method tries to either overcomplicate or simplify the method of predicting the future. And there are multiple ways to value a company. There's the venture capital method, which is super popular, the Berkus method, scorecard valuation method, risk factor summation method, combo platter method, cost to duplicate, discount cash flow NPV method, Chicago method, replacement all-in method, the rule of thirds. So I will go into more depth on just a few of these, but I can also characterize some of the other ones, or you could look them up later on if we don't have time for that. The first most popular one is the venture capital method. The goal of this method is to determine that the investor's return on investment expectations when he or she invests into a startup and calculate the terminal value at harvest year. The terminal value is the expected value of a startup on a specific date in the future, while the harvest year is the year the investor will exit the startup. So in order to calculate the return on investment, you have to first calculate the terminal value using free cash flow and weighted average cost of capital method. I'm sure most of you have already gone through this through your financial analysis course. This is something that if you do financial analysis and valuations, this is something that you're going to be doing on a daily basis. So after you calculate the terminal value, and remember, like, valuations are basically, you're trying to predict the future. So you're trying to value the value of a company in the future, for example, in 5 to 8 years. After you calculate that using a free cash flow and WACC method, you track backwards in time and to evaluate the expected return on investment and to identify what would be the investment amount to calculate pre-money valuation. So in this example, say for example, in 5 years, your investment, you want to exit your investment, or you think your investment will cost, the company will cost 100 million. You're thinking that, okay, if I raise it from within 5 years, my return on investment should be, well, my actual return on investment should be 20 times, basically. So you get to 5 million. 5 million would be the value at year 1. And then you calculate the pre and post money valuation from that. So the value of the company at year 1 is 5 million minus the amount that was invested into it. So it equals 4 million. That's the pre-money valuation. The money, that's the valuation of a company before the investment. You have 4 million, you have to adjust it with dilution. So meaning that every time someone in the future invests into this company, your shareholder ownership will be diluted, basically. A great example of how investments get diluted is if you watch a movie called Social Network. It's an example of how Mark Zuckerberg was able to dilute the ownership of his other co-founder. And it's a very interesting movie, and it shows kind of how venture capital works and how you have to be very careful in terms of who you bring on as your co-founder. So say, for example, the pre-money valuation is 4 million. You anticipate dilution of 70%. So that makes the post-money valuation after adjusting for dilution at 2.4 million. So that's going to be the valuation of the company before you invested that 1 million. So the next example would be the Barkas method. The Barkas method is an even greater estimate. It's definitely much of an art than an actual science here. It was developed by an angel investor called Dave Barkas. And he thinks that investors should be able to envision the company breaking $20 million within 5 years if it's a successful company. His method assesses 5 critical aspects of a startup: the concept, the product offers basic value with acceptable risk, the prototype, which reduces the technology risk, the quality of the management. If it's not already there, the startup has plans to install a quality management team. Connections. There are some strategic relationships in place already which reduce competitive risk in the market. And then the launch plan, which is the go-to-market strategy. There is some evidence of a sales plan and preparation for product rollout. This doesn't apply to all pre-revenue startups. So Dave Barkus gives each aspect a rating of up to $500,000, which means the highest possible valuation for a startup for him is 2.5 million. And this is a simple example, like going through the 5 critical aspects. If it's a sound idea, he gives it, like, for example, in here, he thinks that the idea out of 500,000 is good, not excellent, but good. So he gives it 300,000. Then the prototype, the technology, say, for example, it's astonishing, it's brilliant, he gives it 500,000. The management team is not excellent, but pretty good. So he gives it $300,000 as well. And then the strategic relationship, go-to-market strategy is not that good. Maybe even like it needs improvement. So he gives it only $200,000. While product rollout plan, a rollout of sales is minimal. Well, they have some sales, but it's not anything considerable. So he gives it only $100,000. That means before investment, he would evaluate this company at 1.4 million. And then again, if you're investing only, for example, let's say 50% of it, or maybe even like 20% into the startup, you would have to multiply 1.4 million by that 20%. So this method is a simple estimation, very simple, often used for technology startups. It is a useful way to gauge value, but as it doesn't take the market into account, it may not offer the scope some people desire. So for example, if we take the realities of Ukraine, this would not be a good approach. Even if we take realities of France, this would not be a good approach. This would be more of a more or less decent approach that's used in the US, and investors will use this method to quickly evaluate the company basically in their head, so that you don't have to really sit down and calculate. You could basically get an elevator pitch from the startup and immediately kind of evaluate how good that company is. The scorecard valuation method, or the Bill Payne model. I would like to note this one as well, because Sia Partners, we normally use the venture capital method, where we try to evaluate the terminal value and the return on investment using some revenue forecasts that we already have. But once again, often case, you might not have any sales or revenue yet if it's a pre-revenue company. And then we match up the venture capital method with the scorecard valuation method. So we do a hybrid of two. And I've even spoken with friends and colleagues who also went to KNEU, who work in like investment capital Ukraine. And they work in the venture capital fund of investment capital Ukraine. And what they say is basically that they also married up hybrids of multiple methods and have a very developed, sophisticated scorecard. And if something doesn't hit one of the criteria, they don't invest. So they're very strict about their scorecard. So this is a very popular startup valuation method used by angel investors, known by Bill Payne. I'm going to kind of quickly run through it because we don't have much time and I want to really get to the Q&A. The main focus here is we determine the average valuation for pre-revenue startups in that market space. So this method can be used in the realities of Ukraine. When you take the pre-revenue valuations of other Ukrainian companies, you determine how the startups stacks up against others in the same region by assessing the following factors. The strength of the management team. This is a very important factor because you rate it for up to 30% of the full valuation of the company. The value will vary dramatically depending on the background and experience of the founding team. Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg could make a 10% stake in a new technology startup worth a 9-figure investment, whereas your computer illiterate pal Joe may only be able to command a few $100 for the same stake. So this is very important, and that's why when you see that Elon Musk is raising money for his next endeavor, he normally raises hundreds of millions of dollars because he has a proven track record through PayPal, Tesla, SpaceX, and other initiatives. Then size of the opportunity. It's also rated really high, up to 25% of the value. You may have some warm leads interested in your pilot product. The bigger your potential market is, the better, especially if you have leads that are ready to buy. Product and technology, up to 15%. That's the prototype and the actual technology. Competitive environment, up to 10%. Entering a market full of high-level competition is a risk, and your valuation will drop as a result. This can be definitely seen across food delivery companies, Raketa, Glovo, Uber Eats. Then in the US market, there's Seamless, Grubhub, Caviar, other ones. Then there's like marketing, sales channel partnership, up to 10%. Ideally, you should be able to prove your user base is growing and that people are engaged. If you have an app with 100 sporadic users, that's worth less than 20,000 loyal fans who use it every day. Then need for additional investment and other factors. So Bill Payne states that in building a business, the quality of the team is paramount to success. A great team will fix early product flaws, but the reverse is not true. So that's something that you should take away from this method. And that's it, Q&A. So let me just exit out of this and see if we have anything in the chat.
Роман, дуже дякую за чудову, я сказала, блискучу лекцію. У мене самої є безліч питань, які мені б хотілося, я напевно треба годину, якщо у вас буде час, годину з великим задоволенням тільки на питання і відповіді присвятили. Якщо в студентів є швидке запитання, то прошу.
Супер. І знову ж таки, ви можете питати будь-що. Як потрапити в цей сектор, працювати там, як краще будувати свою компанію, ну і такого сорту питання, або де більше прочитати, навчитися про дані тематики.
В нас, виявляється, в університеті, на інших факультетах студенти теж вибрали такий курс. З того семестру будуть вивчати, наприклад, факультет економіки і управління. Тому нам взагалі було б цікаво звести всіх тих, які б хотіли вивчати більш детальніше венчурний бізнес, і такі робити сесії теж з відомими венчурними інвесторами з різних регіонів світу. Просто зараз нас можуть вибити. Zoom закінчується в 2-й годині.
Ага,
кожна хвилина на вагу золота. Шановні студенти, ну, по-перше, я щиро дякую Роману за чудову, просто блискучу лекцію. Сама радію, що ви такий блискучий лектор. І я впевнена, що ми, дійсно, дуже багато запитань. В кого є швидке запитання? Я думаю, питання в нас більш глобальні. І дійсно можна було б, якщо у вас буде час на одне із занять, так підключитись, щоб ми могли поспілкуватися з вами питання-відповіді. Буде у вас час, Роман?
Можна щось придумати. Все залежить від того, коли у вас буде заняття, бо я буду за нью-йоркським часом, і це буде, можливо, буде дуже рано вранці.
Ну, ми з вами тоді спишемося і знайдемо можливість. По крайній мірі, студенти можуть написати, якщо у вас буде час, і ви зможете там коротко відповісти.
Я, до речі, бачу, що дехто задає запитання, що в Україні венчурний капіталізм є не дуже розвинутим, а звичайні інвестори просять велику частку компанії. Де краще шукати в Україні інвестиції? Знову ж таки, є в Україні доволі нормальні венчурні інвестори. я б сказав би, ICU має дуже гарний підхід, Dragon Capital має гарний підхід, Horizon Capital має гарний підхід. Є, до речі, моменти, де треба дуже бути уважним, бо коли в Україні часто люди, які мають гроші, або дуже багато людей, які мають гроші, в них, можливо, негарні історії з попередні, типу, як вони заробили ці гроші. Я не буду називати прізвища і імена, але всі ми добре знаємо, що в нас в Україні є такі випадки. І проблема, яка виникає за кордоном, що коли американські чи європейські інвестори перевіряють на due diligence, хто є попередніми інвесторами в цих стартапах, і вони бачать, що, наприклад, є якийсь там, хай там не дуже гарна людина, яка має порушення по KYC чи проти відмивання грошей, це зразу стоп-кран, це вже все. Це американці, європейці не будуть в цю компанію інвестувати. Коли ви як стартап шукаєте інвестиції в інвестора, вам треба шукати не просто хто гроші дасть, а хто буде гарним партнером, хто вам не заплямить вашу репутацію. Чи варто шукати гроші за кордоном? Звичайно, варто. Проблема з українських стартапів, що я бачив, що українські стартапи, які приїжджають в Америку, вони слабо підковані в тому, як презентувати. Вони, наприклад, мають там технологію, але вони не можуть розповісти. І я неодноразово, коли питав людини, типу, як how is your English skills? Вони кажуть, хорошо для айтішника. Тобто людина на спілкуванні з інвесторами, вона розмовляє скриптом. Ну, тобто програмним скриптом. Це не є нормально, тобі треба нормально спілкуватися з інвесторами. І часто краще, можливо, долучити партнера, який, можливо, має сильніші навики в плані бізнесу і спілкування, і домовленостей. Ось. О, у нас є деякі...
Тобто краще, щоб хтось робив, можна сказати, інвестицію, хтось робив технологію, а хтось її презентував. Я правильно розумію, так?
Ну, просто за навики презентування ніхто не хоче давати частку в підприємство, бо це не є корисно.
Але мається на увазі, хтось веде бізнес, хтось робить технологію, так?
Так. Зазвичай оце гарна комбінація, коли в тебе є технічний лід, і коли в тебе є якийсь суто бізнес, маркетинговий і фінансовий лід.
Угу. А такі от, саме я розумію, що є також і збори інвесторів, там, де приходять, скажімо так, і венчурні інвестори, і приходять люди, які зі своїми ідеями, і один одного, можна сказати, шукають. Так, це я правильно розумію?
Так, є збори, є дні, коли просто як організовується, я додав свій імейл, якщо хтось не встиг задати питання, можете мені написати. Якщо бувають pitch day або демо-день, організовується, коли група стартапів якогось рівня приходить і вони презентують перед панелю інвесторів. Там буває в залі бувають від 20 інвесторів, а буває до 400 різних ангельських і різних інвесторів. І вони слухають цю ідею. Коли як стартап ти хочеш потрапити на якийсь демо-день або комусь пічити, треба, звичайно, завжди дивитися на сектор, для кого ти це представляєш. Бо такі демо-дні зазвичай розбиваються на будь-то фармацевтичні технології, будь-то на рітейл і електронну комерцію, будь-то на фінансові технології. Інвестори зазвичай ходять по таким групках і індустріям, яких їх цікавлять.
А як саме туди потрапити? Чи воно просто висвічується в інтернеті, що є такі, наприклад, збори, чи це якісь персональні запрошення є? Бо я такого, чесно кажучи, в інтернеті прямо не бачу. Знаєте, збори інвесторів, приходьте там.
Вони не роблять, воно як організовується? Вони роблять це збори інвесторів, вони як ніби організовують піч-день для стартапів. І тоді туди самі інвестори приходять. Зазвичай це як поширюється? Робиться оголошення, що в нас буде піч-день, всі бажаючі стартапи подавайте свою анкету за цим імейлом або за цим посиланням. Ти відправляєш свою анкету, зазвичай це на таких на ранніх стадіях це просто презентація і короткий опис, хто ти, що ти. І ти подаєшся туди, вони тебе розглядають, вони вибирають там 5-10 топ-стартапів, і які потім презентують ці аудиторії інвесторів. воно буває настільки швидко вирішується питання, що бувають прямо з аудиторії, які люди прийшли просто так глянути, що там будуть за стартапи. Бувають, що інвестори готові прямо на місці виписати тобі чек. Але знову ж таки, треба бути до цього готовим. Приїжджали українські стартапи в Нью-Йорк, які деякі були готові, а деякі були геть сирі і не готові до цього.
Ага, а готові мається на увазі, тобто треба мати всі показники вже розрахованими, математику, це все, що потрібно для аналізу, скажімо так, будуть.
Хоча б, оскільки, якщо це рання стадія стартапа і в тебе ще немає там якихось доходів і продажів, то тобі хоча б треба проаналізувати, яка в тебе є частка ринку, яка потенційно ти можеш собі завоювати, які потенційні в тебе можуть бути продажі. Як я сказав, що розрахунки – це більше мистецтво, чим якась чітка наука, особливо в венчурних інвестиціях. Але тобі треба показати, що ти якось розраховував, що в тебе є якісь там ринкові переваги чи можливо
прогнози якісь зробити.
Так.
Наприклад, якщо ми там візьмемо стільки інвестицій, то будемо стільки заробляти.
І сама презентація має бути готова, що ти можеш розмовляти і відповідати на питання. Є волонтерські організації в Штатах, українські волонтерські організації, в яких є люди, які працюють в венчурних інвестиціях, в тому числі я, люди, які працюють в технологіях. І вони навіть допомагали переглянути там кейс, сказати, чи ви готові, чи не готові, давати якісь поради. Тобто, загалом в Штатах доволі є сильна група українських людей, які намагаються стимулювати розвиток техсектору в Україні.
У нас є також, наприклад, Lift 99 хаб. Це естонський хаб, який приїхав також вже в Україну, і в мене знайомий там працює, вони також роблять стартап, і там у них є люди, які напряму можуть познайомити тебе з інвесторами або знають дуже, мають великий нетворк і готові поділитися цим нетворком.
Звичайно, да. Я думаю, є інвестори по всіх країнах, але чим перевага в тому, що, наприклад, в Штатах ти виходиш на ринок, де тобі треба, щоб твоя команда або компанія була адаптована тільки на одну мову, на англійську. Ринок збуту там 30 мільйонів населення, 300 мільйонів населення, якщо не, по-моєму, 350. І купівельна спроможність там набагато більша. Тому всі французькі, німецькі стартапи, вони коли розширяються, в них першим ділом це вийти на ринок Штатів. Можливо, ця динаміка трохи буде змінюватись з Китаєм, але Силіконова долина, або Кремнієва долина, вона не дарма лідер на ринку.
Не дивлячись на те, що там конкуренція на дуже високому рівні.
Але і інноваційність там на високому рівні. Якщо в тебе є конкурентний продукт, який дуже інноваційний, який дійсно має потенціал, то завжди можна знайти покупця. Приїжджали українські стартапи, які були геть інноваційні, в Америці на ринку такого не бувало. Приїжджали українські стартапи, які робили як ніби конкуруючу платформу до чогось, що вже успішне і існуюче. І до них також була зацікавленість, бо, по-перше, інвестори хочуть диверсифікувати можливість, і, по-друге, вони бачать, що хоч вже існує якесь рішення по компанії, але ринок не насичений ще достатньо. Ще якісь питання є? Будуть питання, пишіть мені на емейл, будуть стартапи, також пишіть мені на емейл. І ми це все розглянемо. Я думаю, вже Лариса Анатоліївна вже відключилася. Я не чую, там на м'юті.
Так, напевно, відключили.
Ви на м'юті, я вас не чую.
Перший раз не відключили Zoom, дали можливість поспілкуватися. Я хотіла сказати, що через тиждень до нас приєднається справжній венчурний інвестор, бізнесмен із Великобританії Юрій Сікорський. Саме він і надає ангельські інвестиції будь-якому проєкту. Тому зможете прямо йому направити будь-які проекти, які вас цікавлять, і отримати фінансування. У нас в університеті є така партнерська домовленість з університетом Рейдінга, тому будуть ще і венчурні інвестори, які надають кошти.
Я б також порадив, що якщо є можливість навіть показати проект інвестору, то ви просто можете отримати якісний фідбек по тому, де ви не дотягуєте, де вам треба покращити якісь там аспекти своєї компанії. Це зазвичай, це дуже корисно.
От, Роман, з вашого дозволу, якщо би вам було цікаво, нам дуже потрібно для розвитку бізнес-акселератора або нашого бізнес-клініки, де Антоніна Котова. Ми зараз хочемо подаватись на 1 грант, для того, щоб в нас в КНЕУ був такий центр, де ми могли б надавати такі бізнес-консультації по Києву, по Київській області, будь-яким там технологічним проектам, виключно з точки зору ось такого консалтингу. Якщо у вас буде час і зацікавленість, то ми б вас запросили долучитися онлайн до таких робіт.
Давайте поговоримо детально про це.
Добре. Дякую дуже щиро дякую вам за сьогоднішню зустріч. І всім дякую. Тоді до наступних наших занять.
Дякую вам. Всім щастя.
До побачення.
До побачення.
Дякуємо, до побачення.